Namaste, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for another session of Ayush Talks. So today's session will feature Dr. Manas Kshirsagar. Dr. Manas was born into a Rigvedic Brahmin tradition and has an extensive Ayurvedic background. He is a NAMA board certified Ayurvedic doctor, and he graduated from the Aloha Ayurveda Academy and completed his master's in science in Ayurveda and integrative medicine from the Maharishi University of Management. He is also an acclaimed wellness consultant and has worked as an Ayurvedic consultant at MAPI and the prestigious Raj Panchakarma Center in Fairfield. Dr. Manas has extensive training in many different healing modalities, including certifications in yoga, meditation, and Reiki. So in this session, he will offer an Ayurvedic perspective on how the color of food can define our diet. So Dr. Manas, would you like to join this session, please?
Namaste, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It is my pleasure and honor to be here with you all today. Today's topic of discussion is one that is a little bit fun and interesting, but also very important to note, because the topic of discussion, the rainbow colors of foods, is not something that is specifically written in the Ayurvedic texts. This is more of a Western approach to making sure that you're eating all different types of food in moderation. And so as we go through today's presentation and workshop, it's important to note I will be highlighting some of the main aspects of Ayurvedic digestion, nutrition, as well as what modern research has been saying about these foods. So let's go ahead and begin. Unfortunately, the rainbow diet does not mean you get to eat cake like this every day, but rather it means eating a food of many different colors, okay, wide variety of colors. And the reason that we say that is because nature itself is so bountiful. One of the biggest things that, biggest concepts that Ayurveda revolves around is being made by nature, being found in nature, and being made for nature. And so what happens when we disrupt or don't listen to, adhere to those laws of nature, it puts our body into a state of imbalance. And so when we look at what a rainbow diet means, it's simply eating a variety of colorful fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, grains, okay? These different colors often indicate different types of phytonutrients, vitamins, minerals. And those phytonutrients are very specific compounds that have been linked to tremendous health benefits, which we are going to take a look at today. So this concept corresponds to many different instances of healing, including chronic diseases such as heart disease, cancer, diabetes. But more importantly, the foods themselves have a very pranic nature. They're filled with prana. And that's part of the reason that certain foods are only available at certain times throughout the year. For example, I live here in California, and we are blessed to get almost any type of fruit and vegetable any time of the year. Okay. Mangoes we can get from Mexico, even avocados we can get from Mexico. Certain fruits and vegetables we get from the northern part of the country. And sometimes I wonder why people don't eat according to their local atmosphere. There's a term that's been coined recently called locavore, people who only eat foods found within a 100-mile radius of where you live. And what this does is it ensures two things. One, you're eating foods that are found locally. And so the nutrients that are there in the soil naturally are also present in your gut microbiome. And number two, you are eating according to the seasons. Okay, this is following the sort of ritucharya that we talk about from an Ayurvedic standpoint, because the seasonal changes, seasonal shifts that take place have to be adhered to in order to maintain health throughout the year. These foods also have antioxidant properties. Okay, each color corresponds to these different phytochemicals, which we'll see. And those antioxidant properties are usually what gives rise to health and healing. Now, keep in mind that you can't overdo antioxidants. So if you're sick or if you're suffering from one of these chronic diseases, such as cancer, you cannot say, all I'm going to eat is these smart foods. And you'll see what I mean when I say smart foods versus dumb foods. We call them flunk foods, F-L-U-N-C, flunk foods. But eating these antioxidant-rich properties have, like I said, many different health benefits. Okay. For example, red, orange, yellow foods have carotenoids, and these are excellent for eye health. Okay, lutein, zeaxanthin, these are all examples of a carotenoid, and they accumulate in the retina. That's why they're so good for eye health. They've also been associated with lower age-related macular degeneration. Okay, as we get a little bit older, our eyes tend to get worn a little bit, and the macular degeneration that happens, especially eating these red, yellow, orange foods, it's been proven to be associated with lower risk of that macular degeneration. Okay, dark leafy greens, okay, broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, kale, all of these cruciferous vegetables, sort of, they contain compounds, sulforaphane, that have been linked to cancer prevention. Actually, these studies show that these compounds have the ability to inhibit the growth of cancer cells and activate certain healing enzymes. These enzymes are what is responsible for not just protein formation and making sure that the body is functioning at optimal level, but also it inhibits the growth of these cancer cells. And what we found in our practice is we have so many patients, especially here in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, who, one, have made a decent amount of money, okay, but their diet as such is so different because they are eating a lot more grains and processed flours and dairy and cheeses and different animal-based proteins, that the wide variety of fruits and vegetables has sort of gone by the wayside. Yes, there's apples and oranges and, you know, some of the most common ones, but people don't typically go out of their way to make sure that they're eating a very rainbow-colored diet. Another example of cognitive health is blueberries. Okay, blueberries, strawberries, even blackberries are rich in these antioxidants, and there have been several studies that suggest regular consumption of these berries have a positive impact on cognitive function, memory, protect against age-related cognitive decline, anything that helps with focus, attention, and memory. Okay. These bioactive compounds that are found not just in berries, but even some of your exotic fruits, mangoes, pineapples, persimmons, papaya, all of them can help protect the body from disease-causing forms. Cardiovascular health, eating red and purple foods, such as grapes and berries, have also been associated with reduced cardiovascular risk. Okay, and so understanding the benefits of these. For example, if you know you have a certain predisposition, let's say that everybody in your family has gotten blurry vision or macular degeneration very early on in their life. Well, now you know that if you favor some of these red, orange, yellow foods, that you might be able to stave that off to a later date. Okay, if you know that you have a history of cardiovascular disease in the family, okay, favoring such foods, fruits, vegetables will again help to dissipate some of the genetic predispositions that we have. Right? There have been more and more studies that show that not only do genetics play a role, a minor role, but epigenetics, how you eat, how you live your life, your lifestyle, exercise, and stress management, the epigenetics have a bigger impact on certain gene modulation and expressions. And so you can actually turn on and off certain gene expressions based upon how you live your life, the foods that you eat, how you manage your stress, and how well you exercise. Colorful foods are also responsible for gut health. Okay? A diverse gut microbiome has been linked to various aspects of health, including digestion, immune function, and even mood. Okay, the enteric nervous system, the brain and gut connection, is simply that. There's more happy hormones that are released in the gut than there are anywhere in the brain. And so we see this when you eat fiber-rich, colorful foods, leafy greens, fruits, whole grains. This all contributes to a healthy gut microbiome. And this healthy bacteria that's usually found in the gut is debilitated or weakened by a number of things. Right? Number one is alcohol. Number two is stress. Number three is chronic illness. Number four is medication, okay, pharmaceuticals, anti-inflammatories, NSAIDs. And number five is a poor mental health. Okay. So if you suffer from anxiety, if you suffer from depression, if you suffer from bipolar disorder, we've seen that the gut health, the gut microbiome is significantly diminished in people who have these mental health conditions. And so it really is sort of a chicken and the egg scenario situation. When patients come to us, we first have to address whether it was the gut that went wrong or the mind and mental health that went wrong first, because they are linked hand in hand. They're very cohesive with each other. Next, let's talk about some of these superfoods. Okay, superfoods are made in nature and made by nature. They are power-packed with nutrients, bioflavonoids, fiber, antioxidants. We'll look at what an ORAC value and Andy score means. They have greater bioavailability in the body. Okay. They are very intelligent foods. They're usually organic, non-GMO. Seasonal variations, which we talked about more for seasonal needs. In the majority of the world, when it is hot outside and in the summertime, you are given with fruits and vegetables that are naturally inherently cooling for the body. Okay. Versus when it is cold outside, you are given more of these root vegetables to make sure that you are a little bit warmer. And again, superfoods are anything that is very lively, vibrant, full of prana, mana, chi. All of these are simply just different words and different cultures, languages for energy. Okay. And when you eat these superfoods, what it allows the body to do is relate better to nature. And that's something I think a lot of people forget. We are very natural human beings who are trying to keep up with the hustle and bustle of modern technology and modern life. And what it does is it disconnects us from abiding by those laws of nature. Let me just give you a couple examples. For those of you that wake up with the sun, wake up early enough to watch the sunrise, you notice that there's a different energy about that time of day. And it's because all of nature is waking up at the same time as you. Birds are chirping, animals are waking up. And once they do, what is the very first thing that animals do? If you have a dog or a cat after a nap, what is the first thing that they do? Well, they stretch, right? And the first thing that we do is pick up our phones. After we eat, right? After animals eat, right? One of the things that they do is they sit quietly or rest for a few minutes after eating a meal to allow that digestion process to start and take place. What do? We get up and get to the next meeting or go back to our computers, get back to work, get in the car. And so this disconnect that we have with nature primarily is based upon how we see ourselves, okay? As well as not having this connection with food on a daily basis. How many of you only have a kitchen because it came with the house? How many of you cook on a regular basis? How many of you are in tune with the food that goes into your body? My mother, Dr. Manisha, is also an Ayurvedic physician. She's also an excellent cook. She's written a couple cookbooks. One of them is called Eat, Taste, Heal. Yeah. But the reason I bring this up is every time when we were young and we would complain and say we want to go out to eat, and whenever we would go out to eat, she would say, yes, sure, let's go. And whenever I would order something off the menu, she would always ask me, do you think this is the chef's favorite dish to make? Do you think that he loves his job? Do you think he's preparing this dish especially for you because he knew you were coming today? Do you think he puts a lot of love and care and attention into the food that he's making? And she never said, that's what I do. But inherently, that's what she was referring to. At home, we have the ability to control all of the prana, all of the energy that goes into our food. But when we have this food prepared for us from somebody else, we don't exactly know. And that is a big component of how we process food. For those of you that have ever eaten when you're experiencing trauma or stress or extreme emotions, anger, fear, guilt, jealousy, you notice that the gut doesn't work. You don't digest food. There's two hormones in the body itself, in the gut, especially, that are released in order to create balance within the body. One is called leptin, the other is called ghrelin. One is responsible for the body telling the brain, hey, I'm hungry, feed me. And the other is responsible for the gut telling the brain, hey, I'm full, stop eating. But funnily enough, when you're in a state of stress or one of these, extreme emotions, neither of those hormones are released. And so if you're eating, you will continue to eat and overeat and emotionally binge eat. And if you're not eating, you won't even think about food and completely skip meals entirely. And so this connection that we need to foster and relationship that we need to build with our food is based upon how we perceive food. I have some patients who are complete foodies who love every aspect of food, including cooking and playing around with different flavor profiles and trying different things. And then I have patients who would receive nutritional IVs if they could, because they think that eating is such a chore and it's so boring. And so wherever you fall on this spectrum, it's important to nurture and nourish your relationship with food. The ORAC value is something very interesting. This is the oxygen radical availability within the body. Okay, when you eat these specific foods that you see here, beans, especially legumes, smaller lentils, mung dal, even split yellow, red lentils, things like that, along with berries, strawberries, blueberries, blackberries, and leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, spinach, kale, asparagus, chard. These are all high in the free radical availability within the body. And then, so you have your ORAC value, and then you have your ANDI score. ANDI score are foods that have, ANDI basically stands for Aggregate Nutrient Density Index. Okay, so how dense per gram each of these foods are in terms of nutrients. Okay, so if you see kale is at 1,000 versus Coca-Cola is at a 1. Okay. The majority of patients that I see fall in the 50 to, I would say, 10 range when it comes to an ANDI score. Okay. A lot of these are processed foods, right? Peanut butter, bread, yogurt, beef, and any of the meats, ice cream, things like that. Whereas the first few, especially on this list, you can see that they all have an innate quality about them, okay? That you can plant all of these things, right? And when you plant all of them, it carries an inherent natural consciousness within that food, okay, that allows it to repropagate itself. You can't put a loaf of bread into the ground and expect it to have the inner intelligence to sprout more bread, okay? But you can do that with broccoli, cauliflower, strawberry, right? Tomatoes, blueberries, any of these foods that you see in the first here left-hand column, right? And so that's basically what that means. The nutrient density of these foods is so high that it has that inner intelligence. And when we consume these foods, it allows our body to decipher and understand the benefit of the inner intelligence of those foods and vegetables. So let's take a look at what some of these superfoods entail. Any of the aged grains, so quinoa, couscous, brown rice, barley, oats, kashi, all of these whole grains are considered superfoods. Okay, any of your mixed beans and lentils, extra virgin olive oil, sesame oil, ghee, okay, even coconut oil. Leafy greens, which we've talked about a lot, spinach, leeks, kale, cilantro, collard greens, broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, all of the cruciferous vegetables. Okay, some lean meats, fish, salmon, turkey, all of these are easy to digest, easier to digest than red meat, and even some of the red fish, brown fish. And so they're considered superfoods in some instances. Okay, root vegetables, carrots, sweet potatoes, beets, all of the colorful fruits and vegetables, the spices, okay, that we use, especially in Indian cooking, turmeric, ginger, cinnamon, cumin, coriander, fennel, black pepper, all of the more traditional spices. Okay. Mixed nuts and seeds, almonds, walnuts, pecans, flax seeds, sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. All of these are very good in terms of the nutrient density index. Okay. Dairy products, eating a little bit of ghee, some milk, yogurt, sweeteners, okay, some natural sweeteners, honey, maple syrup, jaggery, suka nut. All of these can be considered as superfoods. The biggest goal when it comes to superfoods is variety, rotation, small quantities, and cooked versus raw foods. Okay. So there's a little bit to be said about both of those. If your body is in a state of balance, okay, you can eat raw vegetables, you can eat raw nuts and seeds, no problem. But if your body is still fighting an imbalance or struggling, especially from a vata or a kapha imbalance, then these are certain things that you want to make sure you cook even before you consume them. Okay. We will have a little bit of a time for a question and answer towards the end, but feel free to type in your questions in the chat box and we will go through them, okay? Next is this concept of Ojas and Amma. I don't know how familiar everybody is with Ayurveda, but this basically is dependent upon your Jataragni or your digestive fire. Okay, if you have a strong digestive fire and capabilities, it leads to strong Agni, okay, which is a strong Ojas, which creates subtle nourishment in the body. That means that everything is digested, assimilated, absorbed, and eliminated properly. But if you have a weak Agni and a weak digestive fire, then usually what happens is Amma formation, toxic residue, undigested foods, and it resides somewhere in the body, okay, whether it's in the gut, whether it's in certain tissues, whether it's in organs, and it will look for areas of weakness in the body to lodge itself. And so it's so important to make sure that you're eating one according to your appetite and hunger level, because that's what will give you a good indication of your digestive power and the strength of your Agni. And to ensure that you don't mess with your Agni too much, okay, don't overeat. Reduce ice cold foods and beverages. Sip a little bit of warm water with your meals. Rekindle your Agni with fresh ginger lemon juice, okay, or digestive herbal teas. Something as simple as ginger tea or CCFT, cumin, coriander, fennel tea. Even a little ginger lemon pickle. All of these things are digest aids that will help to start the digestion process in your stomach even before you consume a meal, to make sure that this digestion process happens completely. Okay. Next, we're going to talk about some of the chakras and how they align with the foods that we consume and what their responsibilities are within our body. You have to keep in mind that Ayurveda is a multi-modality approach. And so we look at not just the foods that you eat, but any blockages that you have in the body. We look at your exercise routine. We look at your daily routine. We look at the impact of stress in your life. We look at how well you're able to communicate with certain relationships in your life. All of these different things create sort of an umbrella for your health and well-being. Okay. So to strengthen the first, the root chakra, the Muladhara chakra, is eating a lot of root vegetables, okay? Beets, potatoes, protein-rich foods, things that are very satiating and grounding to create stability and security within the body. Okay, and this is located at the base of the spine. The Sacral Chakra, Swadhisthana, is the foods to eat are orange, mangoes, papayas, okay, sweet and tropical fruits, as well as some nuts and seeds. Okay, all of these help to create more creativity, induce sexuality, and the emotions that are associated with pleasure and happiness. Okay, and this is located below the navel. The Manipura Chakra, to balance this, you should eat yellow foods, bananas, yellow peppers, holy grains, healthy fats, ghee, avocados, extra virgin olive oil. Okay, this helps to increase personal strength, confidence, as well as digestion, because it's located in the upper abdomen. Next is the heart chakra, okay, located in the center of the chest. To increase love, compassion, to build stronger relationships, you should be eating leafy green vegetables, green teas, foods that are rich in antioxidants, foods that promote heart health, cardiovascular health, okay, such as those grapes, such as those berries as well. Next is Vishuddha, eating hydrating foods. Okay, has anybody heard the phrase "eat your water"? Eat your water. So this just means eating foods, especially fruits and vegetables that have a high water content. So cucumber, celery, apples, pears, mangoes, watermelon, cantaloupe, all of these fruits and vegetables. Okay. And so especially for the Vishuddha chakra, this is good to eat those watery foods. And this helps with communication, with self-expression, with how you communicate not only to yourself, but the outside world as well, and is located in the throat. Next is the third eye. Okay, this is located between the eyebrows. Okay, eating purple foods, dark purple or blue foods such as blueberries, grapes. Again, all of the foods that are rich in antioxidants that support brain health. This will guide us towards having better intuition, better insight, and more spiritual awareness. Okay. So the Ajna chakra is responsible for seeing the unseen, so to speak. And then lastly is the crown chakra, which is responsible for our connection to higher consciousness and higher levels of spirituality. It's located at the top of the head. Okay. But in terms of food, we actually suggest fasting to develop the Sahasrara chakra, simply because it builds this connection to consciousness. Okay, making sure that you're eating very pranic and sattvic foods to develop and enhance this area of the body. Okay, and really understanding that as we balance and align all of our energy centers throughout the body, okay, what we're doing is we're giving our body the ability to heal itself. Okay, let me say that again. As we align all of the energy centers, the chakras within our body, we are allowing our physical body to allow itself to heal. I promise you, your body is much smarter than you or I. Any doctor that you go to, any physician that you see, any jyotishi, any guru that you go and visit, your body's inner intelligence is much smarter than anybody else. The only problem that we have is we don't develop the same communication with our physical body as well as we should. If your body is in health, it will naturally crave those foods that are healthiest for it. If your body is in a state of imbalance and is out of balance, it will naturally gravitate towards those weird food cravings, sweet, sour, savory, okay, chocolates, junk foods, things like that, that will throw the body even more out of balance. And in Ayurveda, we say that when diet is wrong, medicine is of no use. But when diet is right, is correct, medicine is of no need. And this aspect, as it revolves around diet, digestion, nutrition, and health, is fundamental in understanding who we are as human beings. To take this one step further, if you understand your prakriti and vikriti, your innate body constitution, as well as your current imbalance, it will allow you to make minor changes throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the months. Okay. For example, if you know that it's cold outside, what is the sort of common sense thing to do? How do you warm up the body? Well, you sip warm tea or hot water. You eat warming and heating foods, right? And same thing when it's the opposite. If you're in an area that's very dry and windy and vata imbalancing, okay, you want to favor foods that are a little bit more oily, a little bit more unctuous, eating those healthy fats to make sure that your body stays in balance. Now, all of this seems very matter of fact and common sense when I say it like this, but really we don't always have the benefit of checking in with our body at every single moment of every day. Right? For example, I know that I've been speaking for the last 40 minutes, 45 minutes now. I can feel a little bit of scratchiness in my throat. It's probably best that I stop and sip some hot tea. Right? I know this about myself, but I also know that I still have a few more slides to get through. And so this balance of knowing what you need to do versus what you should do is a very fine line. And we have to understand how to toe that line. I always call it being the director of your own life. Okay. Does everybody know what the responsibility of a movie director is? Right. A movie director sits in the director chair and they manage the entire set. Right. They notice entrances and exits. They notice certain cues. They tell people when to action and when to cut, right? When to stop and take 5. They notice all of the verbal commands that their actors are saying, all the physical cues, how their bodies are moving and acting. And so being in the director's seat, you see everything. Imagine if you did that with yourself. Okay? If you took yourself out of your body and placed it on top of the room, what would you tell yourself right now? I would probably tell myself, sit up straight. Okay. Don't talk with your hands so much. Take a sip of tea. Right. When you can check in with your body like this at multiple times throughout the day, it allows the body to make these minor changes and correction on its own before leading to full-blown disease and imbalance. Next is more how to eat as opposed to what to eat. Right? We spent a lot of time talking about what types of foods you should eat. Okay, but you should be conscious of your eating habits as well, making sure that you're sitting in a relaxed, comfortable environment, that you're not eating when you're upset, that you stop when you're satiated, satisfied, and leave at least a third of your stomach empty. Okay. That you have some sort of connection, whether it's prayer or spiritual connection with the food that you're eating, right? Thank whoever prepared the meals, wherever it came from. Bless your food before you eat. Okay. Keep an eye on the kinds of foods that you take onto your plate, the size of portions, any cravings that might arise. Eating all 6 tastes at every meal. Eating all the colors. And so these are more food sadhana techniques as how to eat as opposed to what to eat, right? I have a lot of patients who, are eating muffins and sandwiches and things like that on their way to work just because they don't have time in the morning, or they're eating while they're sitting in front of the TV. And so it breaks that sort of conscious connection that you have with whether your body is full or whether it's enjoying the food that it's consuming. Okay, and so when you eat like this, it creates a lot of stability and unharmony within the gut microbiome itself, as well as how you perceive your relationship with food. And then lastly, these are your flunk foods, okay? FLUNC, frozen, leftover, unnatural, nuked, so anything that is put in the microwave, or canned, okay? All of these lose their pranic value over time, okay? So even leftovers, for example, in Ayurveda, we say that no more than a 24-hour period. So if you cook something for lunch, okay, you can have it for dinner that night, but not for lunch the following day. Okay, when you microwave your food, for example, it takes a lot of the vital nutrients and energy out of that food. And so the main things that I want you to remember from this presentation are to eat real whole foods, okay? Foods that have the innate intelligent property to recreate itself, okay? Remember, you cannot place a loaf of bread in the ground and expect it to grow. But you can do that with an apple or broccoli, spinach. Eating these real foods in all colors to provide your body with the best prana, best energy, and best inner innate information, intelligence. Okay. Consume all 6 tastes to balance all of the doshas. Okay. Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent. And lastly, honor your hunger. Eat according to your hunger and appetite levels. Kindle your Agni and eat with awareness in order to facilitate digestion. Thank you, everybody. And now we will stop for some questions.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you so much for that very, very interesting presentation, Dr. Manas. It was also such a good-looking presentation, such a colorful presentation. The mind doesn't go to just how wonderful food can look. It's almost like, food doesn't need to be styled, right? Nature does its styling on its own. We have like all these food stylists making a plate look so amazing, but just fresh food on a plate is enough for something to look so good and appetizing. So thank you so much for taking our minds in that direction. We're open for questions and we already have a few. So I'll just take the questions. The first is from an anonymous attendee who's actually someone who regularly attends all of our sessions. So I don't even know if it's a man or a woman, but this person is asking, why are some people told that they can't eat the cruciferous vegetables when they are the most nutrient-rich foods? How might these be reintroduced?
Cruciferous vegetables are one of the hardest to digest when somebody has weak Agni. And so it creates a lot more gas and bloating and vata tendencies within the body. And so that's one of the reasons that they're part of the elimination protocol when it comes to people who have digestive imbalances. And so that's why they're told not to eat them. But same thing with our dal, right? When I tell especially foreigners, Westerners, to eat more plant-based protein, and they refer to beans and lentils, either they've never made them before, but if they don't soak them, right, we have the same thing. It creates a little bit more gas, a little bit more indigestion, and hard to digest qualities. And so cooking the food properly is one aspect that will help eliminate some of the digestive inconsistencies when it comes to cruciferous vegetables.
Thank you so much. I hope that answers your question. Then we have a question from Padmini ji, who's asking what kind of food helps to prevent and cure even arthritis?
Arthritis. So there's two main categories of foods. One is healthy fats, and the other is basically anti-inflammatory spices. Those two in conjunction with each other are going to be the most beneficial for general type of arthritis. You know, if we're talking about osteoarthritis, that's more of a eating your water, kind of watery fruits and vegetables scenario. If it's more rheumatoid arthritis, it's more anti-inflammatory, antioxidant types of foods. But just overall arthritis, you want to make sure that you're consuming good quality, healthy fats. So ghee, olive oil, sesame oil, coconut oil, as well as anti-inflammatory spices. So turmeric, black pepper should go in hand with each other, okay, as well as cumin, ginger, and fennel. Okay. And so incorporating a lot of those back into your diet or reintroducing them. And as far as foods go, you want to eat foods that have a low calcium index, okay? And so more of those cruciferous vegetables, less of the leafy greens, more of the watery fruits, apples, papaya, pear, watermelon, things like that. Again, it differs a little bit based on which kind of arthritis somebody has, but that's the general rule of thumb.
Thank you so much. I hope that answers your question, Padmini ji. We have another question from our anonymous attendee who's asking, how can this person help? How can I help my teenager who is overeating learn how to respect portion sizes? She eats a lot of vegetables and fruits and legumes, but also craves a lot of white pastas, rices, and breads. So any tips on how we can inspire teenagers to eat better?
I think for teenagers, it has more to do with the eating habits than it does anything else. You know, when they're sitting sitting at the dinner table and eating their meals, whether it's with family or by themselves, it again fosters that connection between the brain and the gut, okay, which is usually severed for a lot of teenagers. There's a lot of emotional varieties, ups and downs when it comes to people of that age. The second is simply helping them understand the benefits of protein in terms of satiation. Okay, protein will make you feel full a lot quicker than a lot of these empty caloric foods such as white pastas and breads and so on. Okay, and so you will have to eat a lot more of those types of foods as opposed to just a little bit of dal, okay, or rajma, or whatever it is, plant-based protein. And then lastly, it comes to helping them understand that the types of foods that they eat are directly correlated with how they feel as adults. Okay, if they eat a lot of junk food, if they eat a lot of processed foods, if they eat a lot of these refined flours and things like that, okay, it affects their gut microbiome and in turn their mental health as they age, as they get a little bit older. Okay, and I'm not talking about 40s, 50s, I'm talking about 20s, 30s. And so early adulthood is when they will start experiencing those changes in mood if they are eating a lot of this junk food.
Thank you so much. I think that's, we have another question from Beena ji, who's asking how to cure autoimmune liver disease through food.
Autoimmune liver disease. So the problem with autoimmune conditions as a whole is the body forgets what is good for it versus what is bad for it. And autoimmune inherently means that the body is attacking itself. And so whether it's liver disease or any other type of autoimmune condition, we have to help the body relearn, we call it pragyaparad, the mistaken intellect, where the body naturally thinks that unhealthy foods are beneficial for it. Okay, it craves those chips, cookies, and crackers because it believes that those are healthy. And that's essentially what's happening with autoimmune conditions. And so it takes a little bit more discipline when it comes to those, because you cannot trust the body, unfortunately. And so you have to make sure that you're on a very strict protocol of certain foods to eat. When it comes to liver diseases specifically, this is where we engage a lot more of the antioxidant foods, where we engage maybe even some lean meats, okay, fish, chicken, eggs, to make sure that the proper cytokinic metabolism is taking place in the liver. And so that transition of lipophilic to hydrophilic molecules happens innately and properly, because when you have an autoimmune condition, that disconnect is always present.
Thank you so much. We have a few more questions from Padmini ji, so I'm just going to combine both of them. She's asking, did you say low calcium diet for arthritis? And if so, then why do doctors give calcium or rather prescribe calcium tablets or gel calcium tablets, I think she's saying. And her second question is, she thought that milk and curd, etc., having calcium was a good way to have calcium, natural calcium in your diet. So these are just some thoughts she's put out there.
Mm-hmm. So let's start with samprapti, the stages of disease in Ayurveda. When there's certain stages of disease, and once you're in an arthritic stage, okay, it's basically telling us that the doshas are no longer specifically imbalanced within the gut itself. So that means there is some sort of digestive incapabilities. When you give people supplements or tablets, whether they're just nutraceutical supplements, whether they're pharmaceuticals, you have to look at the bioavailability of those supplements. Okay, so in this case, we're using calcium. They overdose on calcium in the hopes of the body absorbing some of that in order to feed the joints. Okay. Now, from an Ayurvedic standpoint, that's not what we do. Okay. We work more so on the gut and increasing bioavailability and increasing rekindling Agni, bringing the doshas back into the koshta, and allowing the foods that we are consuming to digest, absorb, and eliminate properly as the first thing that we do. Okay, so even before we treat the arthritis, we have to make sure that the pathways of nutrition as well as elimination of waste are functioning properly. And so that's why we use these rekindling herbs and make sure that the body is able to absorb them before we give any sort of calcium-rich foods, before we recommend any sort of milk, paneer, dairy, cheese, even calcium supplements.
Thank you so much. We have one more question from Tej. Although I'm not sure, he's saying, is it okay to fast for 40 hours and then break your fast with fruit? I don't know if 40 is the number that maybe that's a typo, but I guess what he means is, like intermittent fasting, when you go for like several hours without food, or even for breakfast, I guess just after a long time of not eating, Is it okay to break that sort of cycle with fruit?
Yes and no. Yes, as in that's the first meal that you should have, absolutely. But it should not be how you break your fast. Okay, you should always break your fast with some sort of Agni Deepana. Okay, so whether that's a little bit of ginger tea, whether it's a little bit of ginger lemon juice or ginger lemon pickle, whether it's a little bit of just plain hot water with a little bit of fennel or black pepper, something to restart the digestive fire before you even eat fruit.
That's great advice. Thank you so much. I don't see any more questions, but thank you so much for patiently answering all the questions, Dr. Manas. Before we leave, if any of our participants would like to get in touch with you, is it okay if we share your email address in the chat box with everyone who's watching?
Of course, absolutely.
Kotiji, will you please put that and share it with everyone? We have to share Dr. Manas's email address. And also, I'd like to remind everyone that these sessions are recorded and will be available on our Indica Yoga YouTube channel, as well as the Indica Yoga website. So anytime you'd like to access this amazing session that Dr. Manas has just shared with us, or you'd like to share with friends and family, it's all going to be available on the YouTube, Indica Yoga YouTube channel and our website. I think it's in the chat box. Yes. And Kotiji has, it's Dr. Manas at ayurvedichealing.net in the chat box. Anyone who'd like to access his email address. We have 2 more questions. Do you feel like answering them? We have 3 more minutes if you want to take them. Sure. Mrinalini ji, I've just answered that question. Is there a recording available? Yes, there will be. I said it'll be on our website and our YouTube channel. And the last question we're taking for this evening is again from our anonymous attendee who's asking, it's so difficult to not eat leftovers in a society which has people so busy all the time. Cooking plant-based, nutrient-rich meals takes a certain amount of time. What is your recommendation on how to, well, as far as possible, eat freshly cooked meals?
I'll tell you a short story. Okay. My father grew up in a relatively poor rural village in India. And when he first started traveling and making some money, he was here in Europe and then later in the US. One of the first things he did was buy a little mini fridge for my grandparents, okay, and a little mini refrigerator. And before he left to come back to the US, he filled it with fruits and vegetables and milk and water so that they would have cold food, right? Cold fruits, vegetables, everything. And then he came back about 6 months, 8 months later he wanted some cold water. And so he opened the fridge and he found that it was unplugged and it was filled with toys and electronics and clothes. And he called my grandma over and he said, what is this? Like, what's going on? Why aren't you not using this? And she said, well, we simply don't need it, right? We get fresh milk delivered to our door every day, every morning, right? Whatever fruits and vegetables we need for the day, we go and buy from the manda, from the market, right? Any leftovers that we have, we give to the beggars that come to the streets, right? Or to the cows. We really don't need this. Right, we have this big clay earthen pot that we use for cooling water, and so there's really no need for it. And while I understand that that's not practical in today's world, okay, our refrigerators are getting bigger and bigger, okay, as we speak. But the key takeaway there is, as well as you can streamline your life and get into a routine of taking care of your health, you will not have to pay for it on the back end. Okay. Taking care of your health is a full-time job. And if you take it seriously, it will pay dividends time and time again, better than any job you will ever have in your life. Okay. And there's no such thing as taking care of your health at a later date. If you can address that issue in that moment, a little bit of effort, you get into this routine early on, especially if you have children, teaching them these healthy habits much earlier in life, because it will teach them the importance of healthy diet, healthy routine, healthy exercise habits, which will, again, only help them in the long run.
Thank you so much. I think that's such wonderful advice and such a lovely story to end this session with, because, you know, all these modern comforts that we've been given, we forget sometimes that they may actually be a hindrance to our natural way of life. You know, it's so important to remain self-sufficient and just be natural. So I think that was a great story. Thank you for sharing. And great advice. I don't know if we can take any more questions, but anonymous attendee saying thank you so much. And also, Koti ji has shared the YouTube channel link in the chat box for anyone who's interested. Please go ahead and access all our videos from there. Dr. Manas, thank you so much for joining us all the way from the States and taking the time to do this. It was such a wonderful session, and we hope to collaborate with you again. And for everyone watching, I'll see you again next week for our next session of Ayush Talks. Namaste, everyone. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you, everybody.